Good morning and welcome to Echo Music Conference 2020. My name is Eunice Obianaga. I am one of the co-founders of the Echo Music Foundation, the organisation putting on today's event. We're so super excited to have all of you. We launched this event last year because we were really keen to share knowledge, share expertise about the music industry, both in Nigeria and internationally. So we've got some amazing panelists coming up today. The first panel is going to be all about music business and law. So if you need to know how to negotiate, if you want to get into the business side of things, that's perfect for you. The second panel is all about songwriting and publishing. Publishing is one of those subjects that people find hard to understand. So we want to unpack that today, as well as a little bit more about the songwriting process. Then our third panel today is all about mental health, a subject that isn't always regularly spoken about, generally and particularly in Nigerian African cultures. So we wanted to highlight that because mental health is so important to everything we do. And then finally, we have an in-conversation interview with two amazing artists, Poe and Simi. So we are online today. So if there are any technical difficulties, please bear with us. We've got lots else for you to do. Please chat in the chat room, get to know other people, network. You can have one-to-one conversations as well. We have some polls and some surveys going on. We want to know all about who you are and what you're doing. So please participate in that. And also, in case you didn't see, we have got an amazing opportunity. We are partnering with Hot FM. And if you email your registration confirmation into us at info@theechofoundation.org, that's info@theechofoundation.org, there is an opportunity for you to have your track played and to get an interview on Hot FM. So that's our day today. We're really looking forward to presenting this to you. I'm going to come off screen so that we can get started with our first panel shortly. Have an amazing day.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. For those watching, hello, my name is Joey Akan. I'm a music journalist and a number of things in the music industry. And I'm excited today because this is one of the most, I don't want to use the word taboo when discussing mental health in the music industry. People either act like it's not a problem, they ignore it until it gets to a point where it can be ignored. And around that period, there are fatal consequences, culminations. So I have a number of people here with me. Amazing people. Hello, Godwin Tom.
Hi, Joey.
Hello, Godwin. Ikon. I have Ikon, a music producer. Hello, Ikon.
How's it going, Joey?
I'm good. And I have Mena. Mena is a bit of an expert in this. She's a coach. She's done extensive work on creatives working in the best possible conditions, optimizing their spaces, mental spaces, and a number of other things. So we have a good couple of people here today. Okay, first, Mena, why do you think it's such a taboo to discuss mental health at all?
I think when you think of mental health, it's very imperative to see it the same way that we see physical health. So mainly just knowing that at the end of the day, we're always going to have feelings, regardless of whether they're positive feelings. We also have negative feelings. And I think sometimes people don't like sitting in that space to think about the negative stuff that does happen in a lot of our lives. But I think we're coming into a day and a time and age where people want to get real. So the stigma is lifting, definitely. I mean, this panel is definitely a testament to that. So it's really just getting comfortable and understanding that at the end of the day, we all have mental health. The same way we have physical health, it's also our mind is a muscle. And so we need to nurture it in order to just become the best versions of ourselves possible.
Okay. For yes, like you said, we now have conversations like this in these sort of spaces. On the back end, there are a number of conversations. Recently, we've seen LVRN, the label, they created an entire mental health package for artists and professionals also. And then there have been conversation with a lot of people losing their lives, a lot of people going through a lot of public outbursts. Um, Kanye's mental health has been mentioned recently as part of the reason why he's been very vocal, the way he's been communicating the way he has. And so this question is for Ikon. How do creatives, or rather, when do creatives need to recognize that, mental health is a thing? When do they get aware of it? When was the first time you ever became aware of mental health?
Well, first thing I'll say is, when you say mental health, there is like a spectrum of different challenges that one can go through: anxiety, depression, PTSD, all these things. I'm not a doctor, but I've been through depression. I've dealt with bouts of depression in the past, and I think that what I went through was I was socially anxious. I had mood fluctuations. I had, sadness, hopelessness, despair. It was deep sadness for me. I had challenges sleeping. I had eating disorders. So all these things are the symptoms that come with, depression. But like I said, like there's a spectrum. There's PTSD. There's there are different phobias. There's ADHD. All these things go under the mental health, challenges spectrum. But yeah, depression has its own challenges. Like I said, social withdrawal, sadness, hopelessness, and all these things.
Thank
you.
Yeah. But then, as a follow-up question, how did this period, when you had this challenge, how did it affect your work?
Yeah. So for me, it was it impacted more than my work, but it inspired my work. For me, it inspired my work. It can inspire the work of creatives. I put out an album almost entirely based on this concept. And at the time of creating this project, I was heavily depressed, but I found myself trying to get out. So the album for me was trying to get out. The depression inspired me to tell my story, but more so the need for me to get out of this funk, for me to get out of this depression. So it made for a deeper, more realistic, more honest body of work for me. So in that way, it can inspire your work to be more honest and more vulnerable. But it's not always something I would advise anybody to go to get inspiration for. But yeah,
that's an interesting perspective. More interesting is the fact that there was a study done in 2017. It was done by University of Westminster and a music tank, Help Musicians UK. And what they discovered, they researched worked with over 2,211 artists across a lot of genres in UK music. And 73% of them, 71% of them had mental health challenges. 60%, 68% had anxiety, and then a large number also had depression. And it wasn't just the artists. Also on the back end, we had professionals who complained about the music industry being a catalyst for mental health challenges. it's a high pressure environment. There are a lot of things going in. So this question is for Godwin. Hello, Godwin.
Hello.
Okay, you've worked in this industry for a while. 10 years of Lena is a campaign that you carried out to educate people based on your story. But I don't think you know you've had like conversations about like the mental health implications of the music industry. Um, how do you think the music industry is a catalyst for mental health challenges?
Well, first thing I do talk about it. So it's actually in my curriculum when I have my programs. Because I also have dealt with depression. And one of the things I see, one of the challenges I've seen is most people when they talk about mental health is not from an informed place. It's usually from a place of um, it sounds like the thing to say to get a good reaction, right? And I've been in situations where I've actually seen someone post something on Instagram and I've called the person to take it down because that was insensitive, right? But but to them they felt like they're just saying what they feel, it is. So I'm like, so you don't even know what it feels like, you don't know what it is. You just think this is what would get you some attention. So that's the first thing. There's a lack of education. And because of that, most people aren't finding the best place to deal or the best ways to deal with their problems. The second thing is you're dealing in a society or in an industry where you're in the public eye. And the moment you're in the public eye, there is that reaction you get for doing something good, and there's that attack you get for doing something horrible, and it's all public. And some people don't have a healthy, they don't have people around them that sort of create a block to all of that mess. They don't have a family they go back to. They don't have people that understand the issue. Um, and so they deal with it themselves. So it's a difficult place. So the higher they go, the harder the fall, because I have more followers on Instagram. I have more people at my shows. And the moment I make a mistake, that any individual could make, I'm being attacked. So I can see individuals who are making similar mistakes just go scot-free. But because I have 2 million followers and I am I'm this celebrity, everybody is in my business. It is a catalyst for just sitting in spaces with artists and just talking to artists. You realize that there are some things they wish they could do. And sometimes if you're not paying attention, you will miss that stage of loneliness that leads into the different situations that they get themselves into. So it's such a public industry where even as a manager, you could become incredibly popular simply because your artist talks about you on a regular basis or you're seen hanging out with an artist. So your life becomes public as well. And that sort of speeds up the reaction people give.
And then for us as a professional,
Yeah.
every time they complain about how we've seen complaints all the time, or rather, it's standard practice to have complaints about the nature of the music industry, where you say, hey, people hardly ever sleep, or it's very high pressure. You're always on your feet. Some people would say they have to look over their shoulders, every time. Some people would say they're always on competing. A lot of people would say because of the nature of what they're creating, it always feels like they're swimming against the tide. Um, these practices as a professional, they get to you mentally.
Well, they do. When you deal in any competitive environment, there's a strain physically, mentally, emotionally on you to achieve certain things. And as I said, the higher you go, the harder the fall. So the higher you go, the more the expectations, um, the more people want your time. It gets harder as you go. as you go on. But I think that we're beginning to learn, right, to deal with some of these issues. So some of us have a way of shutting down, some of us have a way of, you know, keeping out certain information from our, even social media has provided some of those tools to stop some of these activities. For example, I have words that I mute because of how they make me feel, or the conversations I've seen from that word, and I've just muted those words, and it has drastically reduced how many times I see conversations around around those words. So these are some of the things that people do. But I think as an industry, or any industry, because Mena said something that was very important. The same way you treat physical health, you also need to understand that there is a lot of us are too focused on looking a certain way, sounding a certain way, but we're not paying enough attention to the things that we're taking in and the things that we're doing to help build that our mental strength. And I think the more you grow in the industry, the more important it is to do that. The more important it is to feed mental strength.
Okay, thank you. Mena, as someone who's worked with a lot of creatives to optimize, their work and their spaces, and you've worked with people also with mental health challenges, at what point, or rather, there are two schools of thought. There's some people would say mental health is a destination in itself, while some people would tell you it's a process. It's how you drive, not where you're going to. For creatives, a lot of creatives are always on. A lot of creatives are always on. They feel forced to create, especially in a year where we've had a pandemic and their lives have been changed. A lot of people aren't traveling, gigs have disappeared. They've had to do a reckoning with themselves. How would you say a creative should optimize to better protect their mental health?
I'd say it's, for me, a very kind of two-pronged thing. So as you said, it can be a destination, but for me, I'm really advocate people really going through the process of it all, understanding feelings. I feel like once you understand and better understand your mind and how it works, it enables you to create and just do everything that you can. So it's interesting because this whole topic was around like creative block. And for me, I feel like there are so many, like, I don't feel people have creative blocks. And I think we should actually just stop calling it that, because in moments where we're not being actively creative, our mind subconsciously is creating. As creatives, we are made to create. That's who creatives are. And so I think we just need to really understand that in managing the process of it all, it's going to have its ups and downs, its ebbs and its flows. And just being okay with that. I would say the best thing to start off by doing something like this is make sure your environment is conducive. I know Lagos really isn't one of those places. It's tough. Like, I've lived in Lagos, and I know it can be like, from the hustle and bustle of everything, like, it's a lot. Just managing the infrastructure of how the country is run, it's not very helpful, but you need to be very intentional about your well-being. If that means something like, okay, making sure that the people you even surround yourself with are the people who feed into your soul, who feed into your mind, and keep you like in high spirits. I think particularly as a creative, it's easy to have friends in the industry who might not really get what you're doing. Those aren't the people that you need to surround yourself with, number one. So it's making sure that you protect your peace and protect your circle, and have like the best possible people around you. I would say another way is for me, I took writing up as a thing that I always do. So even if nobody sees my work, like, I don't believe that as creatives people have to see everything. There are some things that you keep for yourself and you just create that for you. So stuff like writing things, journaling is really helpful. Therapy, I would say, is like the number one thing that a lot of people should go out and try and seek. If you're not seeking it kind of physically, getting the help from a mental health professional, then I would say make sure you're feeding your mind with lots of books around it. So as Godwin said, I think people need to start educating themselves the same way that we educate ourselves on fitness. We also need to treat our mind the same, because we can't think that we can gain strength and success in the physical if we're not mentally strong. And so it's really about coming to terms with the fact that we have to just actively be really super intentional about what we're feeding our minds.
Okay, thank you very much, Mena. So we have a question from the audience there. Someone from the audience. You can share your questions for those who are watching. You can share your questions. We'll treat them here, direct them to who you want to ask them to. But I think this one is for everyone. So it says, does the Nigerian music industry, that is, record labels, management companies, the lot, have structures in place to aid the mental health for artists, instrumentalists, producers, and everyone else along the line? Have you experienced anything? Is there any provision for that anyone knows of?
No.
I don't think it does. But there are a lot of places and resources that people can tap into, especially if you're talking within Lagos. There's a platform called Mind County, who have a lot of therapeutic, like it's run by a specific psychotherapist who deals with people like this. There's another place, BTH Therapy, which is based in Lekki. They do a lot of like workshops and one-on-one sessions that you can get lots of help with these kind of things. And I think in Lagos particularly, we need to start talking about these things more, because it is the number one problem within healthcare in the world today, the mental health issue. It's the number one problem. And so there are quite a few places within Lagos that definitely deal with people's mental health and well-being. And so it's just about, even if the Nigerian music industry does not have that, be intentional to seek it out for yourself.
Okay. Thank you. But from an executive point, Godwin, don't you think record labels, when they begin to invest in an artist to better protect their project, this is a real issue. When you provide them with things like health insurance, if that's even in the contract at all, don't you think it's sensible for people to say, okay, let's add mental health to this, or don't you think so? Should that be standardized or normalized?
It should be. Part of the reason why it's not is because people don't even know how to do business in the first place, and so there's a lot of education that needs to happen on the business side. And even when you do business, part of what business teaches you is to utilize resources properly, so you do not end up abusing it or damaging it, right? So if your artist is your number one revenue resource or source of revenue, it only makes sense to create an environment that helps them stay safe and comfortable. So it's something that should be normalized. I feel like there's a lot of, I speak to record labels a lot, and one of the things that I find extremely disturbing is the need to make the money in 6 months, right? The need to get all that money back. And what ends up happening is you push that artist into a space of self-doubt, because
Yeah.
if I'm told that you're going to spend X amount of money on me, and you're telling me that my deadline to create this is 6 months, and in 6 months time I don't create it, no matter how confident I am, at some point I'm going to feel like I'm failing. I'm going to feel like I'm taking on debt. Like, people don't realize the effect these things have on the artist, right? Because they're looking at other people and they're saying, well, that's happening for that person and it's not happening for me. But there are many variables. So there's that education that needs to go into how the labels, understanding the entire concept of investment, right? And return on investment. It doesn't happen in 6 months. And I also think that most businesses generally are also learning about this, right? In terms of our culture as well, it's a conversation that's difficult anyway across the country. People don't really talk about it. People don't really, I mean, mostly Black culture as well. People don't really, it's really a, well, if you go through this, you're weak. I remember someone telling me that I shouldn't share my um he told me I shouldn't share my stories about depression because I'm going to lose business, right? And he was, and to him he was giving me sound advice, right? And that's part of the issue. Some people are doing this out of the goodness of their heart, which is very dangerous, right? So I think that's another thing that needs to develop. The more conversations we have, I don't think any of this is going to change like this, right? So the more conversations we're having, I feel like more people who understand it and then go into business will incorporate it into their systems and their process.
A number of people would say, okay, they don't understand anything. We still don't find, even for those away from the music industry, for people with mental health challenges, education is something that solely needs to happen, because we've had people, as a kid, as I had friends who had challenges, and then their parents would say, "Hey, this kid's possessed." This was in the 90s. They say, "Hey, this child is possessed." The child's not possessed. It's just he's autistic, or he has, or the child's not possessed. The child is bipolar. That's clearly ADHD, but nobody diagnoses this kid because of a lack of education, and then they, brand the kid something else, and therein goes another life down the drain. So everyone's growing up now. Social media has made us more aware of these things. A lot more education is in place. For creatives, Ikon, for creatives, we've seen a lot of people avoid getting help, especially when they get into these sort of situations. They run away from help, and then they go down a different path. They try to cope differently. They try to escape. Why is getting help such a hard thing to do?
I think we have to look at the entertainment industry as a whole. Um, you have to think about it this way: the entertainment industry thrives on something like
Yeah.
alcohol, right? The entertainment industry promotes, binge drinking, for example. You know what I mean? As a creative, you the first thing that you do when you become or find yourself dealing with any kind of mental or sad or any issue like that is the things available are things like drugs and alcohol, right? You don't have an industry that says, "Oh, go and talk to a shrink." You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily artists running away. It's them finding the first thing that can help them cope with what they're dealing with, which is most of the time drugs and alcohol. And it's not seen that way most of the time because the entertainment industry thrives on binge drinking and alcohol is they sponsor a lot of the what the entertainment industry is about. So it's not looked on upon like something that you're running away. It's part of it. Oh yeah, I'm just sad. Let me just drink a little bit, smoke a little bit. You know what I mean? And I say this because there's a lot of downside to thinking that these things are helping you. And we all know they're not. If you eat too much, you get fat. If you smoke too much, the chances are, it'll affect your lungs. If you drink too much, it can have its toll on your liver or your system. So um, I think a lot of creatives don't have the channels. The channels aren't available. Just kind of the last question that you asked, and Mena gave us enlighten us a little bit. There are new channels, so easy for an artist to feel like, okay, I want to escape right now because the industry is set up a certain kind of way, and the first thing you do is, go to drugs and alcohol. So I think in that regard, the industry itself has a lot of growing to do. And as Godwin said, these sort of conversations are kind of the first steps. We need to continue having these conversations. Godwin mentioned something about muting. What did you say, Godwin? I'd like to even know exactly what you muted and how you did that.
Yeah, there are many words. So basically, Twitter has this thing where you can mute certain words. So there are particular. I'll give you an example what I do, right? Because it depends, right? So there are certain conversations I don't have on Twitter because a lot of people are not very reasonable, right? And Twitter is very conversational, right? Instagram, you can post stuff and then you can walk away. Twitter is like reply, and there's a thread. And so I avoid words about war, because it does give me anxiety. I start thinking about the world I want to put my kids in. It creates anxiety. So those kind of things that trigger those things for me, because everybody has different things. Some people it's just childhood abuse, and it triggers a reaction. So whatever that trigger is, you just switch it off. That's what I do. So Twitter is the place where I have to come to because I have to work. I have to see what people are doing. My programs are being sold on social media. So it's inevitable. I'm going to encounter some of these things. But what those things do for me is it silences it. So just so that when I'm on Twitter, I don't need to start feeling it's not a great feeling. You know what I mean? So I just try my best. There are times when I've just deleted apps. Just I go on an app and I'm like, no, I'm off. Right. So those type of things, I do that.
Yeah, because a bunch of these things are triggers at the end of the day. And like you were saying, it's important to recognize that you have to stay away from certain people, especially when they don't understand what you do. I think this industry and the way social media has created urban music and entertainment now is the pressure to have creatives always be in your face, always be in your face. Look at me, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this. Actually, no, there is at the risk of getting depressed or having some sort of social anxiety come out of it, there needs to be that space. That space, you need to move away from those people, from those things. Especially my thing is Instagram. I'm not too active I don't always post stuff, but I'm always like looking at stuff. And what I've decided to do is narrow it down by following specific hashtags. My specific hashtags like audio mixing, recording, things that I want to be surrounded by. Not Instagram models, not, you know what I mean? Like, it's everything concerning music. So looking at my Instagram now, when I do decide to open it, it's literally audio mixing, recording, sound engineering, speakers, the best computers to buy, the kind of MIDI controllers, microphones. It's literally the things I want to be surrounded with professionally. So that's one way, to kind of get away. It's sort of like a healthy way to get away from, the kind of things that can trigger you.
If you don't mind, I'd like to add to what Ikon said. So the reason why it's important to do what Ikon just said is because Twitter has an algorithm that pays attention to what you're paying attention to, right? So because it knows if you spend time on something, it knows that you're spending time on that because there's time being measured when you're on social media. So it gives you more of that. So if you start curating your page and curating the things that you're engaging deliberately, what then happens is Facebook, which owns Instagram, begins to give you that content because they feel, okay, this is what will keep this person on the app, and that's just what it is. So that's a very, very important thing that people can actually do.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with both Icon and Godwin on that. It's about creating the best feed for yourself possible, because these platforms were built for specific reasons. I watched a documentary this week. I don't know if anybody's seen it on Netflix, called The Social Dilemma, which basically,
I just
it's
saw that
like,
today.
it's crazy, just showing us literally this is how they built these platforms, knowing our psychology, getting into our minds and understanding how they work. And so we need to be incredibly intentional about what we're allowing ourselves to see and what we're exposing ourselves to. If you know that some platforms aren't good for you, it might be a gossip platform, for instance. Like, I don't follow the Shade Room anymore, because for me it was just like, I'm filling my mind with stuff that actually is kind of unnecessary. A lot of it is quite negative. So it's just keeping your mind in a really positive place that's super important as a creative, because that's when you're going to get the most out of what you do and what you're born to do in life. So
Thank you very much. A lot of people would say, okay, when they talk about like their mental health and the music industry for artists, I speak with artists all the time. I interview a lot of people in a lot of these spaces, and when these conversations come up, some people would say they developed anxiety because it became too much, like the pressure became too much. Others would say the lack of normalcy became too much. Like they couldn't be people anymore. They had expectations all the time, both from every angle. Some other people would say they are on the pedestal, they got onto a pedestal early, and they've been unable to grow as people. They've been unable to grow as creatives because they have to continue to play that role in terms of how the public sees them. While some other people would say their problems come from their interaction within the industry. Like people would say, um, a producer withholds their tracks forever, and then that affects the quality of or the timeline that they have. It automatically destabilizes them mentally because they're not moving, they're stagnant. It hits them, or let's say a manager, for example, refuses to look out for them in a certain way, and they're like, hey, even the person that has my business in his hands isn't taking care of it the way I want it to, and therefore I'm not moving as fast as I can move. And so, do you think all of these things? The question from the audience actually says, do you think the attitude of players in the industry add to the unhealthy state of the creative? Using examples like the producer, using examples like the managers not treating their clients right. This is a question for Godwin and then Mena, you also.
Okay, so there's something I saw on PD's page earlier today, and it says I just had to go look for it so I don't misquote it. It says, if you're not direct about what you want, you probably be dissatisfied with what you get. One of the things I always do, I've had situations where I've worked with clients and I've realized that if I continue, I might jeopardize their career, right? And it's important to be honest with yourself and with your client when those situations occur. Another thing is I try my best to be as honest with my clients as possible. So I say things like, even sometimes to make work 10 times difficult for myself. I remember saying this to a client. I said, if I give you a contract and I cannot explain the terms, do not sign it, right? And part of the reason why those conversations are very important is when an artist, there's a level of trust involved in every work in the industry between the business and the creative side. And one of the things we end up doing as business, as the suits, as they call them, on this side, is we are paying too much attention to how we think and expecting creative people to think like us.
Yeah.
So I'm a manager, I'm expecting the artist, like, don't you understand that this is important? The artist is thinking from a creative standpoint, and sometimes, a lot of times, to be honest, the creative thought process is emotional. right? And so what then happens is you're frustrated as a business person because you don't understand the language the person is speaking, even if all of you are speaking English language, but you don't understand what they're trying to say, how they're feeling, and they're frustrated because they don't understand how you're feeling. And for example, you have an artist who I've worked with artists who are very excited about interviews, right? They want to go to interviews. They will even buy a gift for the OAP. But
Yeah.
then I've worked with artists who don't like people. They don't want to go out. They don't want to talk to anybody. But what happens is when an industry where, as Icon said, you have to be here, you have to be here, but we're not paying attention to what the temperaments of the creative person, what they're dealing with. Why do they have a problem? They're artists who have been abused their entire childhood, that they don't feel confident around people. And you're not paying attention to that because for you, this is the business. You go outside, you do the interviews, you do all of these things, and we don't realize the pressure we're heaping on the artist. So yes, that is part of the problem, the lack of understanding of the situation. So I had a way I grew up, right? There are people who would grow up. I saw a video once where a girl married a guy, some TV show. She grew up in a house where she was the only daughter, and she was told every day that she was beautiful. She wear a dress, and they'll tell her, no, maybe it's a horrible dress, but there was a way her parents spoke to her. Then she married a guy who grew up in a house where he would tell if the dress is horrible, he would just tell her, right? But that's how they grew up, and for them that's their normal. So now they get married, and this guy is trying to have a conversation. She wears the dress, and he's like, "That's so ugly. Like, why the hell are you wearing that?" And she starts crying. It's the same thing with interacting with artists and business people. You need to understand, okay, what triggers this person? They're creative people you will show a text message and they will react to. And then you show the same message to a business person and he's like, I don't see anything wrong with it. So it's important to understand those things. Um, the conversation around music being held by producers or their peers, these are all things that happen even in regular life, right? Where certain things that someone else is doing, because you believe that you also deserve that or you should be getting some of that, sort of affects you, and you think about it because I deserve to drive that car, I deserve to live in that house, I deserve to get that deal, right? So it's a normal human reaction, and that is why you need people around you who are able to identify those situations at time and talk to you about it, and talk to you about your own plans, your own projects, your own situations, and remind them of their own wins and what they're putting in place as well. So that's also important. But yeah, it happens.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wants to add anything? A very important question here from the audience is from um, Anenuhu Guatido. She says, and this is for Mena, and say, what sort of language do you think we should be using to create the boundaries or take the time that you need for your mental wellness without using the language that gets you ostracized? The person is asking for either euphemisms or safe semantics.
Firstly, the word ostracize or something that gets you ostracized, I wouldn't necessarily say that that should be the case. So if it's someone trying to ostracize you based on like your mental wellness, then clearly that problem is with the person, it's not with you. Normally they say whenever somebody is coming to give you feedback on something, it says more about them than it does about you. So don't take that on as if it needs to be your responsibility to change your language. I think just express yourself how you want to. And I think this is the thing about mental health and mental wellness, because for such a long time it was stigmatized where people don't want to get vulnerable, because getting vulnerable is kind of like getting naked. Like nobody really wants to do that. Nobody really wants to really show their inner feelings. But I think it's just getting comfortable with yourself and finding ways that you can express yourself in the best way. Don't think that you have to create too many boundaries around it. Obviously, don't go around being rude to people and just, saying, I'm not going to do this or I'm not, because you're crossing. Like, you can be very polite about it, but be assertive, because I think one of the things which people might get wrong as we live in this world as human beings is probably around letting other people dictate your moods and dictate the way that you should feel and how you should express yourself. That should all come from you. And once you start to get confident within yourself, you'll know how to create those boundaries automatically in a way that there doesn't have to be any kind of semantics. Just be yourself. Like, I think that's my advice.
Thank you. Anybody with any addition to that? Okay. Please. Also very important for creatives, and this is from a lot of people, is everyone says they're under pressure. People have always mentioned pressure, and then they begin, and when you ask a lot of them, hey, why do you feel so much pressure? Why are you always looking over your shoulder? Why do you have fear of missing out, FOMO? Why is your paranoia so intense? And they'll tell you, I don't know. But when you hang around them a while, you notice conversations about other people. Like you say, hey, so this is happening for this person. Or things like, hey, I'm checking the charts to stay updated in, what's happening in my field. To spiraling into, why am I not number one? Why am I not number 5? Why am I not even in top 100? Down to hey, this person, we started together, they disappeared. Look at them now, they're getting, they're in the headlights, they're daylight ahead of me. And then we've seen people say things like, I've not won this award, or I've not hit this amount of monthly listeners on Spotify. And then you see comparison right there. You begin to see a comparison. People looking at each other and saying, hey, this person's ahead of me. For those Ikon, how have you been able to, deal with to always compare as a creative? Do you have like personal techniques that you use to, or do you just tell yourself? Do you just tell yourself that your time is different, or there's a timeline for everything? How do you deal with that?
I think first and foremost, it's everybody has their own ways or goals, I guess, when they either get into the industry or any other, creative profession. But for me, after being, doing this for almost 2 decades, you learn that putting that timeline in your head doesn't make any sense, because give you an example. If you want to be a bodybuilder, you go to the gym and put in the time to get to the gym. And even during that journey, you find that what you thought was the natural process of going to the gym every day, you find that it's not that simple. You go to the gym for 3 days, you have to rest 2 days so that your body can heal. You go to the gym for another 3 days, and then after a year, you have to change your routine. So in the beginning, what you had in your mind, of how this journey was going to be, when you start the journey, you realize my main point is that you have to learn as you go. You learn in the beginning, but as you keep going, you continue to learn. The main thing is to actually open your mind and your heart and give space to grow. Have that, at the back of your mind, that you must learn as you keep going. The artists that started 10 years ago and are the great artists right now, they've had to change strategy at least 50 times. At least 50 times, so it's you start off wanting one thing. But for me, one of the main things that I've held on to that has helped me to not be thinking about, I should do this, I should do that, is actually my just simple love for music. I'm making music as a professional, no doubt, but my love for music is there's a joy that I get from creating something that is very pleasant to my ear, but also something that has never been done before, or something that is fresh. So for me, that beats, whatever accolade that comes with whatever kind of music that I make. It's the fact that I get in the studio with an artist, we spend a lot of time trying to create something, and then we finally create it, and it's greater than what we thought about or how we thought it was going to be. That joy of getting to that point, to me, is more important than any accolade or any kind of shout outs or that anybody can ever give me. Because if you do think about it, how, as a producer, what I cannot tell you like scientifically or how I have the gift that I have. I can't explain it. And I don't think that there are people that can try and explain it, but I can tell you that it's not man-made. So why should I be worried about how another man measures my gift? That doesn't, do it for me. It's that I am here and I'm actually doing this thing that I love. I'm actually doing it. Every session that I complete a project is, wow, I did something. If I was to leave this world tomorrow, these are the things that my heart would be put at rest with. You know what I mean? I would be happy that I left doing these things. But obviously, I'm at this point now because I've spent almost 2 decades as a professional in the industry. You don't learn this on the first day. You have to go through the motions. You actually have to get to the point where you're like, yeah, I want to be on top, or you get an award and you realize that the award does nothing for you. You know what I mean? It does nothing. And you're like, I still have to go back to the studio and mix that track, even after collecting this award for best mix engineer in the world, whatever. Or, best producer. I still have to go back and mix the track. And you realize it's not the award, it's not what they said you are. It's the sharing your gifts, as a creative. Is that
thank you very much, Ikon. And then, where does Mena? Where does something as positive as gratitude? Where does it play a role in all of this? Yeah.
Gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude.
I think it's one of the most important things that we all need to remember. I think sometimes even just being on social media, and we touched a bit on social media, but obviously that has the most detrimental impact on our mental health. I think it's the number one thing in this day and age that a lot of people struggle with, whether it's things like comparison, like looking at your peers and seeing that they're getting along and doing a lot better, or they're where you want to be. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody's time is different, and their paths are all different. And so I think just remembering that and being grateful for the small wins keeps a really healthy and mentally stable mind. Like remembering that, okay, that you might not be where you want to be, but you are definitely on your way there, and just enjoying and loving the journey and the process is one of the best things that you can possibly do for yourself. So every day there's a really good journal you can buy. It's called the 5-minute journal. And it's like you list what you're grateful for each day, whether it's 5 things. Sometimes I write stuff like the fact that, I don't know, my grandma is still alive and I can speak to her and see her. Those little things that people don't have. Just continue to build up your gratitude diary and your gratitude bank every day to see how far that you've come. And I'm telling you, it's mentally mind shifting. It will change everything.
Okay. So we're out of time. So, but before we go, for everyone, just before we go, as a way to sign out, a lot of creators, a lot of professionals are watching, and what would you tell everyone who's going through something? What would you tell them? Would you say, hey, I need an advice, quick advice. I'm going through a mental health challenge. What would you tell them?
I'd say, first and foremost, be proactive about your healing process. If you recognize that you have some sort of mental health issue, try your best to be proactive about getting well. And more importantly, surround yourself with people that understand empathy.
Okay, Godwin.
That's it.
Be honest with yourself and be kind to yourself. Um, a lot of times sometimes people go through difficult things and
Mm.
they're paying so much attention to all the negative things that are going on that they don't see the talent they have. They don't see the opportunities that they have even created for themselves. They don't see, and I have this conversation with so many people. One person just stood out, and that sort of took me back to the conversation. But be kind to yourself, right? When things get difficult, it's life. It's okay. It's okay for you to fail. I remember having an argument with someone yesterday on Facebook, and I said, if you fail, it's okay. Like, just get back up and dust up and keep moving. And the guy goes, yeah, but don't fall. And I'm like, actually, never. I've fallen so many times, but you don't see that because every time I fall, I get up, right? So it's okay to fall. It's okay to fail. When you make a mistake, learn from it or not. Just be kind to yourself and just continue to learn and develop yourself as you grow. Learn more about the situation, and what Icon said is extremely important. People who have empathy, they may not understand everything, but they're trying to understand you. They're listening, they're paying attention. And because they're paying attention, it helps the communication with you, and you're safer around them. So yeah.
All right, thank you. And Mena.
I would reiterate everything that everyone said, and I would add to what Godwin said around failing. Just know that you only ever fail forward in life because we're always just progressing. So even if you fail, you learn the most from it. And also, so like building community. Community is super important. Find a space, whether it's online, offline, where they're sharing real stories that you can resonate with, true stories, not the stuff on social media. So I would suggest my own platform that everyone should go and check out or have a look at. It's called The Late Bloomers, where we tell the true stories of navigating the complexities of adulting in the 21st century. So we're just really real with it. We keep it very raw and authentic. And what you realize is that your story isn't the only story. There are so many people who share that story with you. Or ride along the journey with those. That whoever you find your tribe, wherever in these kind of situations, in these places, that's where you'll find your tribe and your community. And that's the thing that will keep elevating you and lifting you up. So make sure you check out The Late Bloomers.
Please type it so everybody can see the link. Also,
Sure,
please,
I
while
will do.
we're at it, there's a website called the Peace Exhibit. There's a photographer called Chudi who contacted photographers across the continent and got them and writers to write something about, one thing about how to deal with depression or people in different situations. And what that community did for a lot of people was show them they were not alone and that there were people that they could talk to. And then he's connecting people to mental health organizations that can help. So I put it on there as the Peace Exhibit, so you can check it out.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, you can also check out Echo Foundation One, the organizers of the conference. They have a number of organizations that deal with creatives and mental health issues. So thank you very much for stopping by. My only advice I'll tell everybody is, try to enjoy. Problem not is finished. All right, have a good evening. Thanks for stopping. Thanks. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.